Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now, your host, Tim Johnson.
As the U.S. economy continues to rebound, and as we see the almost daily announcements of new projects coming to Louisiana, a critical issue is our ability to project the supply and demand of construction craft professionals who will build new and upgrade existing facilities. Developed in collaboration with the Construction Users Roundtable, or CURT, the Construction Labor Market Analyzer is a first-of-its-kind tool that provides the important projections in real time. Daniel Groves, developer of the Construction Labor Market Analyzer, joins us when we return on the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
The Louisiana Business and Industry Show will be back right after this.
Hi, I'm Joe Martin, president of ITI Technical College. Do you want a better life?
Get your associate's degree in occupational studies in information technology from ITI. In 2 years, you'll be on your way to a better life. You will get hands-on specialized training in computers, hardware and software, networking, and more. ITI offers flexible class schedules, and financial aid is available to those who qualify.
So don't wait. Call ITI now or go online. It's that simple.
ITI for a better life.
I'm Leighton Ricks, Livingston Parish, and Livingston Parish is on the move. One of the primary things that we ran on was developing business and jobs in Livingston Parish for our people so that we can bring obviously additional revenue to be able to support our infrastructure needs. We're going to continue to progress here in Livingston Parish. When everybody comes together, these kind of things happen. I mean, what can you say? It's absolutely awesome. It's the perfect place to be. It's where you want to be today, I can guarantee you that.
Hi, I'm Lee Burkeen with Louisiana Football TV Magazine. Be sure to watch our show every week where we have big-time recruits, college coaches, NFL players, current and former players, and call-ins with your questions. Be sure to catch us every Tuesday night at 6:30 live and 10:30 replayed on Cox 4 in Baton Rouge.
Insurance commercials have become unusually funny. We think that's strange because we take auto coverage pretty seriously at Louisiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Of course, when you cover as many vehicles in Louisiana as we do, it doesn't leave a lot of time for silly gimmicks. We're more concerned about what happens to you on the road than any chickens that happen to cross it just to make you chuckle. Louisiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Real service, real people.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show with Tim Johnson.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. I'm very pleased to be joined by Daniel Groves. Daniel is the developer of an important new tool that provides real-time projections of construction craft labor demand and supply, and it's going to be critically important as we go forward with the expanding economy in Louisiana. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here, Tim.
Now, we're going to talk in great detail about the Construction Labor Market Analyzer, but that whole process is affiliated with a national organization called CURT, the Construction Users Roundtable. Give us a brief background on CURT, its mission, what it does.
Yeah, so the Construction Users Roundtable, or CURT, as you mentioned, had its genesis back with the Business Roundtable. So it dates back to the 80s and even before that. In about 2001, decided to put a focus specifically on the construction needs of the industry, representing big owners like Shell and ExxonMobil and BASF and Intel and Dow and DuPont and so on, and said, how can we help those organizations more effectively deploy capital assets and manage those assets over time? And so CURT provides that value to its owner membership through best practices, through effective networking, through committees like safety, handoffs to construction, project management, workforce development, and so on. And so it's been a great organization, really serving the owner community for a number of years.
Now, we mentioned the Construction Labor Market Analyzer, and you've obviously led the development of this critically important tool for the construction industry. So tell us the specific impetus behind the development of the CLMA.
Well, prior to this most recent recession, there were some very big challenges in the industry, and one of the things that was difficult for owners to know, and for the industry in general to know, was, for example, how many pipe fitters are going to be needed in the fourth quarter of 2016 within a 150-mile radius of 70809 here in Baton Rouge. And the inability to answer that question effectively means that you have higher risk of increased wage cost, of more safety incidents, more rework, less productivity, and so on. So it's so important for owners, as they're looking forward and planning projects, to effectively know what will the supply and demand be for skilled labor in the marketplace where I'm planning a project that I need to build.
And really, what we have had up until this point, for the most part, is sort of backwards-looking analysis, right?
Right.
Backwards-looking data. We knew what the supply and demand had been.
Right.
It was much more difficult for us to get our hands around what the supply and demand will be, or project it going forward, and that's really what the Construction Labor Market Analyzer does. Let's talk about it in some detail. How does it work?
Well, and let me say, to answer specifically the statement you just made, it's not to say that those ways of looking backward and forecasting forward were ineffective. They can get within a pretty reasonable place in terms of total demand. The challenge is, again, very specifically, there are a couple handfuls of crafts that have a big need, and if you don't know how to plan for those specifically, that's what really puts you at a disadvantage. And the way this works is that the owners will actually go into the CLMA through a highly secure account, and they'll enter projects into the system. They'll update those projects every 90 days to ensure that that data is fresh, and as it changes over time, whether start and end dates change, cost changes, that the database is refreshed and it's dynamic. And then what they're able to do once that project is in there is they're able to actually visualize how they're competing for individual crafts over the life cycle of the project that they're building. And so it's essential to know that kind of information. And when you know that, you can more effectively employ risk mitigation strategies, of which there are many options if you just know which ones to employ and when.
It really is an interesting tool, and I've been associated with it to a degree and sort of learned a little bit about it over the last couple of years. And I know that this ability to say, in this type project, if I'm an owner and I don't know specifically, maybe at the point at which I am inputting my data, I don't know specifically what my breakdown of craft labor will be. There are algorithms within this system that can help determine those numbers, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, that's one of the key differentiators for the CLMA. So let's assume you're an owner who's planning a project that won't begin for 3, 4, maybe even 5 years out as part of your 5-year plan. It may be at a boardroom level, at a conceptual planning stage. It's not likely that you will take the time to figure out how many pipe fitters and boilermakers and welders and scaffold builders you're going to need on that project. What you're going to do is look at a whole number and say, this is what we expect our labor costs to be. What the CLMA enables you to do is with only a few pieces of information, start and end date, cost, zip code, and a few pieces of information like that, it allows you to be able to see exactly what your craft mix will be, schedules it over time, and then says this is how many you will need based on each period of time, and then allows you to see how you're going to be competing against other projects in the region for that labor. So those algorithms are essential in helping you have information earlier than you typically would have it.
It really is dynamic, real-time information.
Right.
Now, we've got about a minute and a half left in this segment, so I want to touch on this briefly. You know, the old saying is bad or incomplete information in, bad or incomplete information out, right? So how are you working with the construction owner community to ensure that the vast majority of the projects that are planned across the United States are actually entered into the system?
Well, that's a great question, and frankly, one of the things that we have to do is ensure that we are offering a critical mass of information which allows any of our users to effectively plan a project. And so what we do is we work with them to get that data in. We actually benchmark the information in the database based on when the project spending occurs. It's called projects put in place or construction spending. We benchmark that against the U.S. Department of Commerce. That allows us to see how much of the marketplace that we represent. That also allows the user to be able to determine whether or not, in their particular case, that represents a sufficient amount of information for them to make effective planning decisions. Currently, Our database represents nearly 74% of the overall non-residential construction marketplace, and so that would include industrial construction spending, commercial construction spending, and heavy civil construction spending.
It really is a significant tool and some huge numbers with great data that can be taken out of the system, and that's what I want to get into when we come back from the break. We're visiting with Daniel Groves. He is the developer of the Construction Labor Market Analyzer, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show on Cox 4.
The Louisiana Business and Industry Show will be back right after this.
I go to work every day, and I love doing what I'm doing, and I love being a part of Livingston Parish, and to be elected sheriff, to be able to lead Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office is just such an honor for me, and so I'm very excited about not only where we're at today, but where we're going to be at in the future. The parish is so special to the citizens. They work with the Sheriff's Office, they trust the Sheriff's Office. Our community stands behind us 100%, and they get involved. They don't want crime in Livingston Parish.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from the Grand Slam hitter to grandparents. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Hello, I'm Eric Edwards with the Livingston Parish Convention and Visitors Bureau. Find out now what's going on in Livingston Parish. We have over 400 nautical miles of waterways. Tee it up at our great world-renowned golf courses. Shop at our antique districts, or come to Bass Pro, our #1 retailer. There's a lot to do in Livingston Parish that you never imagined. It's all happening right here in Livingston Parish. For more information, go online at visitlivingstonparish.com.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from the three-point shooter to the three-piece suit. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show with Tim Johnson.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. We're visiting with Daniel Groves. Daniel is the developer of an important new tool called the Construction Labor Market Analyzer. Daniel, we talked about the impetus behind the development of the tool in the beginning, and we say new tool. It's you guys have been working on this for 4 or 5 years now, but and we'll talk a little bit about some redevelopment that you're doing that I think is very interesting a little bit later. But you mentioned that there are about 74% or so of the total U.S. construction projects that you guys believe you have loaded into your system. 2 questions. What's the total dollar value that's in the system now in terms of construction projects, and how far out is the system looking?
So the total dollar value of construction activity in the system, and this includes both capital spending as well as maintenance and turnaround spending. And by the way, that maintenance and turnaround is essential because even in a down economy, that represents a base load of construction demand that's important for us to be tracking. But when you look at that total picture of non-residential spending, our database has about $3.7 trillion of construction spending.
3.7 trillion with a T.
Trillion.
Right?
Now that goes all the way out about 10 years. The farther out you get, the smaller amount the data is. Frankly, the sweet spot of the CLMA is 0 to 5 years out. Whenever you're looking at trying to plan a workforce, a skilled workforce, you really need to be looking out a minimum of 3 years, and preferably as much as 4 or 5 years, because to get a pipe fitter or a skilled welder from a new recruit to productive on a job, you need 4 to 5 years of training. So you really have to be looking far enough ahead. And so our sweet spot is 0 to 5 years out, with a particular emphasis on 3 to 5 years out.
We talk about all the information that a project owner, a Chevron or a Dow or a DuPont or an Intel, some of these large construction owners, are asked to put into the system so that we get good information out. But if I'm a construction project owner and I'm out there, what safeguards are in place to ensure that nothing proprietary about my project can be ascertained, so to speak, from the data that I load?
That's essential. In fact, confidentiality and antitrust protections, in short, are the two of the most important values that we offer to those who use our system. And so what we do on that is we ensure that whenever the information goes into the system, that it's done in a way that it blinds it from anybody else being able to see it. All that data is aggregated together so that when you're looking within, say, a 155-mile radius of 70809 again, and you see that there's going to be a demand for 1,800 Boilermakers, you will not be able to identify who those Boilermakers are working for or which project they're working on. In addition to that, antitrust. Whenever you're going into the database to get information back out of it, we have developed all that filtering, all those outputs to conform to federal antitrust regulations. We know those are absolutely essential controls for our owners to feel comfortable putting their information into our system. So we protect it. We never share it, and we ensure that it doesn't violate any kind of antitrust laws or regulations.
You and I have spent a lot of time talking about these very issues, and I've looked at the system in some detail, and I know that it is virtually impossible for any of that information or any of the details about a specific project to be shared. Now,
Actually, it's more than virtually impossible. You can't even back into it. That's an essential piece that we offer.
Can't be done, right? Can't be done. Now, we talked about the part of the system that looks for the demand, right, and projects the demand that might exist. Knowing the demand is fabulous, and it's a critically important part of this whole equation, but it does not mean as much if you don't know what the existing supply of construction craft professionals might be in a given area. So the supply side of this thing comes from the contractors, and you're working very closely with most of the major contractors in the United States to get the data on the supply side. How are you doing that?
So currently the industry relies heavily on the Bureau of Labor Statistics to provide this information. And it's not to say that information is not valuable, but it's not the kind of information you need in a dynamic, fast-paced construction environment to be effectively prepared. So what we've designed the CLMA to do is allow contractors, in the same way that owners put projects in, contractors are able to put in their supply information directly out of payroll. Now, none of the information that comes out of payroll contains any kind of personal information, so you could never identify a worker or a project or where they live or anything of that type of information. But we allow them to go in and put that information directly out of payroll. Again, has to be updated every 90 days because workers are moving. And some of our owners require them to do it every month even, which is more valuable. In addition to contractors putting that information in, we collect information from labor unions. Mm-hmm. In the same way, they go in and put in the workforce that they have, including those who are on the bench and available to be hired. And then we work with self-performing owners. Some of the shipbuilders, for example, are self-performing, so they would be able to put their own labor force in as well. And then other labor brokers like an AmeriForce or a tradesman. So that's really the four groups that we work with to get that kind of supply information.
One of the real critical values that the system provides is in the planning that you talked about earlier. And we talked about the time it takes to prepare a construction craft professional from an entry-level position to a skilled position. And I know that one of the ways this tool is being used is to really highlight the national shortage that we expect, that we have currently and that we expect to have of construction craft professionals. We only got about a minute left in this segment. From the perspective of the construction labor market analyzer, what's the extent of the issue that we face?
Well, the challenge is enormous in front of us, and particularly in the Southeast, which is a 13-state region that is mostly the Gulf Coast area. But there's some big challenges. When you look at all construction, all non-residential construction, about almost 50% of it is in the Southeast. When you look at industrial, about 2/3 of it is in the Southeast.
Let's take a break because I want to come back and talk about that in more detail because I think it's critically important for us to get into. We're visiting with Daniel Groves. He is the developer of the Construction Labor Market Analyzer, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show on Cox 4.
Louisiana Business and Industry Show will be back right after this.
Hi, I'm Lee Kane with Louisiana Football TV Magazine. Be sure to watch our show every week where we have big-time recruits, college coaches, NFL players, current and former players, and call-ins with your questions. Be sure to catch us every Tuesday night at 6:30 live and 10:30 replayed on Cox 4 in Baton Rouge.
Hello, I'm Eric Edwards with the Livingston Parish Convention and Visitors Bureau. Find out now what's going on in Livingston Parish. We have over 400 nautical miles of waterways. Tee it up at our great world-renowned golf courses. Shop at our antique districts, or come to Bass Pro, our #1 retailer. There's a lot to do in Livingston Parish that you never imagined. It's all happening right here in Livingston Parish. For more information, go online at visitlivingstonparish.com.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from the soccer star to the soccer mom. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Insurance commercials have become unusually funny. We think that's strange because we take auto coverage pretty seriously at Louisiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Of course, when you cover as many vehicles in Louisiana as we do, it doesn't leave a lot of time for silly gimmicks. We're more concerned about what happens to you on the road than any chickens that happen to cross it just to make you chuckle. Louisiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Real service, real people.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from long drivers to unlucky drivers. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show with Tim Johnson.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. We're visiting with Daniel Groves. He is the developer of the Construction Labor Market Analyzer. And Daniel, as we ended the last segment, we started to talk about the significant skilled craft professional situation, the shortage that we're going to see, not just in Louisiana, but all over the United States. And so we know it's an issue, but one of the real values that the Construction Labor Market Analyzer provides is for us to get a real-time look at what it actually is. So talk in a little more detail about that.
Well, so as I mentioned before, when you look at the Southeast in particular, for all non-residential construction, about 50% of what's happening in the country is in the 13-state Southeast region. When you look at just the industrial marketplace, manufacturing, power generation, chemical, refineries, and so on, about 2/3 of that is in the Southeast. So when you look across the whole country and you look and you see that there's a shortage that's projected of about 2 million workers over the next 5 years, it's essential not just to look at that number and say 2 million, that's insurmountable. Different crafts are reaching peaks at different points in time. And that's one of the reasons the CLMA adds so much value back to the users, is that it helps you understand exactly when those peaks are coming, and that way you can plan accordingly. But the magnitude of the shortage is just enormous, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But just we haven't seen enough of our workforce return after this recession.
And it's helping us in terms of recruiting and career awareness and some of the things we're doing. And you mentioned it, but I want to drive this point home. This system is granular enough to be able to look at specific zip codes and tell us what peaks will be, what supply might be in those zip codes even in small areas like that.
Well, you are right about that, Tim, although I would say that, again, as part of what we do in terms of antitrust protection, one zip code is not a sufficient enough territory. There are a minimum number of zip codes, there's a minimum amount of radius, and so on. Again, all of that conforms to federal antitrust regs.
Goes back to the fact that it's impossible to extract project information out of this system.
Well, yes. I mean, you never want to say always and never, but we have worked very, very hard and validated that antitrust protection. But yes, you can get very, very granular. So you could get as granular as a 25-mile radius of a particular zip code, or you could go up to as much as a 250-mile radius of a particular zip code. You can look at one or more states. You can look at one or more crafts. You can narrow it down to just capital spending or just maintenance spending. So there's a lot of ways to slice and dice, $3.7 trillion worth of construction spending so that you, as an owner or a contractor, can effectively plan.
And I want to get back to that point, because you talked about the things in the first segment that really, the value that this system provides in project planning and execution, all those sort of things. It really is, in part, a risk mitigation tool, isn't it?
It is. And of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, that the farther out you can plan, the more effectively you can control your risk on a project, the more effectively the industry can be prepared in terms of contractors being ready, unions being prepared, training facilities being filled up, and so on and so forth. And so yes, that it's essential that you look far out as possible. Because if you're considering prefabrication or modularization, you don't make those decisions a few months or even 18 months or 12 months before you need to do it. You've got to be looking far enough out that you can determine if that's the right course of action, or if you need to be recruiting and training and upgrading skills, which we should be doing anyway in our industry. That's essential. Or whether you're looking at alternate contracting strategies. All these require enough lead time in order to be effectively prepared. The CLMA offers the capacity for you to do that effectively.
Really in a pretty unique way. Now, we got about 2 minutes left in the show, so I want to make sure we talk about what you're doing going forward, because there are some pretty exciting changes coming, updates coming to the system. Talk about that.
There are some big changes coming to it. One of the things that we're doing right now in terms of the supply side, again, understanding how many workers there are in a particular region, that's what we can do right now. So you could identify how many workers, how many pipe fitters there are within 70809, for example. The new version of the system, which we're releasing in mid-June, mid to late June, will actually enable you to not just know how many there are living in a particular region, but also where those workers are working. So understanding labor mobility in the U.S. is essential for planning. The other key thing that we're doing is to begin start tracking age demographics. And so when contractors are putting their data in our system, they're actually now putting in the birth date. Again, no personal information, but those birth dates enable us to be able to show you when those workers, or as they age, when they're going to be retiring, and how we need to be backfilling and keeping that pipeline full of skilled workers. That's essential.
15 seconds. If I want more information about the CLMA, what do I do?
Visit myclma.com, myclma.com, and we'll be happy to chat with you and get you involved.
It's a fabulous tool. Daniel Groves.
Thank you very much,
Thanks
Tim.
for your
Appreciate
time today,
it,
buddy. It's been great. That's a wrap, guys. Thanks for joining us. Tune in again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show on Cox 4.